when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard a voice of the fourth beast say, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a pale, the word here in Greek is kloros, a pale horse. His name that sat on him was Death. Hell followed with him, and power was given unto them. Remember, it's all of them. Over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with the sword, with the hunger, with death, with the beasts of the earth. The kloros, which is the color of this horse, indicates the sickly, pale, yellow-green color of disease, from which derives the name of yellow chlorine gas. I really didn't know what that was until a few weeks ago. John and I experienced this stuff coming out of my eyes. I was sick and I had some type of infection, and I'll tell you what, it's exactly what they described. I had some nasty infection in my eyes. It's the same color, and that's the color of this horse. He represents sickness, pestilence, of the and death followed after him. Consider this: of the 59 million people who die each year, approximately half, nearly 30 million, perish from sickness. I thought Jesus said we shall lay our hands on the sick and they'll recover. That's right. Then why are 30 million people dying from sickness? And I don't know. I mean, I pray and sometimes things don't work either. I don't know. I mean, I can't chastise you. I need to chastise myself. But why is things so bad? Because the church is still here. What happens when you don't have anybody to pray with you? I don't want to be here. What happens when you can't afford to go to a doctor? In fact, a lot of doctors, because of what they've done to our medical system, have said that they're quitting. They're getting out of the business. They can't make a profit, which is hard to believe, but listen to this. The world loses the rough equivalent of one nation of Canada every year to disease. And look at it. Look at the side over here. The last verse says, "Behold, I've told you before." This is the beginning of sorrows. It's going to get a lot worse. As modern medicine seeks to conquer disease, civilization is falling further and further behind. Man and his governments have lost control. As new diseases emerge and older ones suddenly mutate, modern medicine has fallen far behind in the effort to eradicate them. Today, diseases thought long ago conquered are back with vengeance. Tuberculosis, cholera, and other deadly scourges from the past have reemerged, this time much more resistant to standard treatments. Have you heard about this? We're facing some hard times coming. This, coupled with poor sanitation, war, overcrowding, and poverty, is creating environments ripe for the massive spread of sickness. Look over here. The world has become more interconnected than at any other time in history. The advent of relatively cheap and fast air travel means that more people now travel abroad. In other words, we mix up the pot all over the place. And we're just spreading this sickness all over. Look here on the left side. The global threat posed by infectious diseases has never been greater. Despite man's best efforts, old scourges such as tuberculosis, cholera, dysentery, typhoid, anthrax, malaria are still very much alive. The other side here, the world is being threatened by a host of enemies which could ultimately wipe out the entire world population. They're saying this now. They're talking about now. And it's going to get a lot worse. Ebola, hantavirus, E. coli, salmonella, currently spreading very quickly. HIV, the West Nile, and swine flu. But at least, and then I have this statement, because a lot of people think this, because you don't hear much anymore. But at least man has conquered the enemy of HIV, AIDS, right? At least we've conquered that. No, we haven't. Over 30 million people in the world are HIV positive, and millions more contract the virus every year. To date, more than 25 million have died from AIDS, which originates from HIV. With the prospect of millions more a virtual certainty, not surprisingly, AIDS has been called a viral nightmare that ravages all nations, threatens the very existence of our species. And it's still out there, friends. Over here on the left, new threats of biological warfare and bioterrorism They're deliberately making new things to cause us to die through biological warfare. The dangers of an international biological attack is a very real threat. On the right-hand side, and remember, my statistics are older. In 2001, the multiple cases of anthrax broke out in U.S. when letters laced with anthrax were sent to news media outlets and congressional offices. The events, widely thought to be an attack by a foreign terrorist, created havoc nationwide. How many remember the anthrax threats? The world's resources, including clean air, water, and food, are also being stretched to the limit. Wars between desperate countries competing for scarce resources are increasing both in scope and intensity. War leads to famine, which ultimately leads to disease. There's a real fear in the world's scientific and medical community that antibiotics could eventually become useless, and this would be nothing short of a medical disaster. 1/3 of the world's population is currently infected by the germs bacilli that causes tuberculosis. New infections are occurring at the rate of 1 per second. AIDS is devastating entire regions in sub-Saharan Africa. It's spreading rapidly around the world. AIDS and tuberculosis have linked up, becoming tandem infections with greater devastating effect. Scientists estimate that around 2 billion people, 30% of the world's population, have a form of Staphylococcus aureus. In the United States, infectious diseases rose by nearly 60% from 1980 to 1992. I thought we had a handle on this, but we don't. It continues to be one of the leading causes of death in this country. The H1N1 is a flu virus. When it was first detected in 2009, it was called swine flu. And people were joking about, I ain't going to get that, I am no pig. Just this disease alone could infect 30 to 50% of the U.S. population. You hear warnings all the time. So far, we've avoided it. About 90 to 150 million people could get it. Up to 53 million worldwide are thought to be carrying the deadly superbug, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, which is called MRSA. I know you've heard of that. They say these strains could potentially become explosive in hospitals. In the United States, outbreaks of waterborne diseases are increasing. Globally, rates of diseases like dengue fever are growing. Outbreaks of insect-transmitted diseases like chikungunya fever are occurring in unexpected locations and are now a threat to even the U.S. Diseases long thought conquered are proving more difficult to treat. This is true of a new, more lethal form of C. difficile, which is more resistant to drug treatments and can cause a potentially fatal strain of diarrhea. I don't like diarrhea. I hate diarrhea. I don't even like going for a colonoscopy because you get diarrhea first. And they even got that, and it's not listed here, but the one, the flesh-eating bacteria. That'll kill you too. That eats your flesh. H1N1 is still a flu virus threat, swine flu. Authorities reported the H1N1 strain could also cause 1.8 million U.S. hospital admission during an epidemic, with up to 300,000 patients requiring treatment from intensive care units. It will kill 30,000 to 90,000 in the United States in a typical winter flu season, concentrated among children and young adults. Pose especially a high risk for individuals with certain pre-existing conditions, including pregnant women. I wouldn't call it a pre-existing condition, pregnancy, but and patients with neurological disorders, respiratory impairment, diabetes, severe obesity, possible for certain populations such as Native Americans. And then over here the scripture, behold, I've told you before. He warned us, didn't he? And here I just want to point out here, we're not going to read this again because we did already a couple times, but verse 8 again, all these are the, what? Beginnings. We really need to emphasize one point. These are just the beginnings.